Welcome to the Music Pro Services podcast. Why do most artists never finish songs or musical pieces of work? This is quite a big problem with some of the artists. It has been for me in the past. And this is not because the music sucks or it's bad. It's because we get stuck somewhere. There's a lot of good music sitting on phones, hard disks, voice notes, but getting it out there sometimes can be somewhat of an issue. I'm going to be explaining some of the issues that there are and how to overcome them. And I'm going to be talking about it in sections. And I'm going to be referring to my notes here. So you're going to see me referring to notes every now and then. And I'm going to be talking from my experience and from the experience from others that I've actually sat down and talked with and come to some sort of a solution, and also where the actual problem derives from. So the first section I want to talk about is the idea phase, or the creative phase, and it can be very, very addictive. You're actually creating something new, and you're starting from scratch, and it's coming from your soul, and it's coming from within sometimes. So, and it could be a new riff, a chord, a lyric, an idea, a beat, or anything like that, and then you start to work on that, and it starts to become this bigger idea, this bigger piece of work. And it can be really, really addictive because your creative juices are flowing, and all of a sudden you're creating something that is actually sounding quite good, and you're thinking, okay, well, I can work with this, or it's sounding really good and you're thinking, geez, this is fantastic, I'm just going to keep adding on it and everything like that. And that is very exciting. It's very exciting, especially if you're in that flow, in that mood where all these ideas are popping into your head and you're not knowing which path to take, and you've got all these creative options, and that can be very, very addictive. And in that part itself, it's a very structural sort of process as well, where you're constructing something. So you're putting in a new part here or a new part there. You've got some problems that you're solving within the creative process, and you're coming up with some more creative things to solve that problem, and you're refining the ideas, and you're making these decisions on the fly, and it's fantastic. And I love that process. And then it all becomes this piece of work where it's very raw, and you're listening to it where you're really excited about something, and you're not thinking on the time that's going past, and you're really in the moment. And that is a very, very addictive phase. I love that phase as well. So that's the first phase, and that's a very important phase, and it's very exciting. This is where you're at your most creative. But then comes a different phase. So that different phase, and that the second phase is the fear phase. So the fear of the song not being good enough. Maybe it's not what you imagined when you start to arrange the piece. Maybe when you're creating the actual structure itself, it's not falling into place. Or you're arranging the instrumentation, you're in the studio, you're putting things together, and it's not quite sounding how it is. And then all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, maybe this song is not right. Maybe it's not the one that I want to release, or maybe the people won't like it. Maybe it doesn't sound polished, or it doesn't sound to the standard that I really want it to sound. And then ultimately, sometimes you think, am I not good enough, or I'm not talented enough? So this is the fear, the fear stage, and it also coincides with perfectionism as well a little bit. So is this song really to my standard? And sometimes those standards can be quite high, and if you don't give yourself a bit of leeway, a bit of room to actually have a think about it, it can be a bit debilitating. So when you're thinking about the actual song, instead of thinking about, is this good enough, or maybe the people won't like it, or maybe it sounds amateurish or anything like that. See what you can do to actually rectify that. First of all, take all the judgment away. Is this something that you want to do? Is this something that really feels right in your soul, right? And then what you need to do is probably strip things back in the arrangement. Is it too much here, or is it not enough there maybe, or maybe put in? This is all about your piece of work. This is something that you're creating, that you're producing, and there should be no judgment or comparison. So this is the part, and this is the phase where a lot of people get stuck, and they leave the piece of music on the shelf, and it stays there for a long time. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, you'll listen to it, or the artist will listen to it and think, oh, well, this isn't too bad. Why did I stop working on this? So it's very important to actually make the idea and stick with it, sort of a thing, and be confident of yourself. And if you feel in your soul that, you know what, this is a good song and this is a good piece of work, all I need to do is just tweak things here, tweak things there, well, then you're on that path. But if you're thinking about, no, this is not good enough, the people aren't going to like it, or this is not up to my standard, and then all of a sudden you stop it, this is where that problem lies. Really exhaust all avenues when you're creating, especially in that fear phase. Exhaust all avenues. Why don't I like it? Why is this happening? And everything like that. And make sure that you're really honest with yourself, right? That is the most important thing, being honest with yourself. So if you think, and then if you've exhausted all those avenues, and then you think, well, no, you know what? This is not good enough. Well, then leave it and maybe shelve it for a couple of weeks or up to a month, but come back to it. Don't let it sit there, because it could be something really, really good. And often it is. So yeah, be honest with yourself. Take the fear out of it as much as you can by tweaking things, and make those decisions really confidently. And if you think that, well, it's still not working, let it go and then come back to it maybe after a few days or a few weeks or even a month. But don't let it go over a month, because that's when it sits there and it'll gather dust. The next phase is the too many options can kill creativity phase. So when you're producing especially, and you're working on a piece of musical work, whether it's a song or instrumental or anything, with the technology that we have today and unlimited plugins and sounds and options, I should say, sometimes it can elongate the process, because one day you'll think, oh, well, this really sounds good, and then all of a sudden, in an hour's time or the following day, you think, oh, maybe I can add this and maybe I can add that, and then it becomes this really big piece of work. If your intention is for it to sound big and massive, well, maybe that is the option. But if that's gonna really stop the process, and it's gonna elongate things to the point where you don't want to make an effort anymore, well, then maybe that's not the path to go down. Strip things back. Make things really simple. Listen to the melody. Listen to the instrumentation. Listen to it in a raw phase as much as possible. Then start adding things in. And add things in really slowly, and really listen to it when you're adding things in. Myself as a producer, I use my ears all the time, 100%. So, and I remove myself from watching what's on TV, what's on the monitor. I was going to say TV, so it shows my age, but what is on the monitor, right? And I close my eyes and listen to it. And sometimes I think, all right, well, something's not right. So I start stripping back. So be very mindful of what you're putting in and what the options are that you have. As I said, we have unlimited options with technology these days, right? So if there's a different snare that you want to put in, or a guitar tone, or I should put that synth in, or this effect in, use that reverb, use this compression, and it convolutes that arrangement, then you're heading down that path where you're going to shelve this project, right? Or this musical piece of work. You really need to comprehend what you're doing and what your ultimate goal is, right? And honestly, what can help with this as well is setting a deadline. So when you set a deadline, it's going to give you the end date, right? And that end date can give you some stress at point, but it will force you to either complete this project by the end date, or it's gonna say to you, you know what, I'm not ready for this, and then you're gonna shelve it. But you have to really think about, are you really not ready for it, or is it a fear coming in and all the stress and anxiety, right? So really dumb things down, simplify them, get rid of some of the options, and play with 3 or 4 options that you have. I find that is very effective. And if you're really early with that deadline, maybe then we can tweak some other things. But really be mindful of those too many options phase, because that can also be, a reason why you're going to shelve the piece of work. And the next phase, which I mentioned, is the perfectionism, right? So perfectionism is going to stop momentum, right? Perfectionism is the reason why songs don't get released, is the reason why no feedback happens, no growth happens, no momentum builds. It's all about your mindset and thinking, this song, even after it's been completed and produced, mixed and mastered, and you think, why is this not happening? This is not what I want. This is not my standard. And sometimes it's not about what you want and standards. Sometimes it's just different. And that's okay. That really is. Sometimes these little things that happen, and these things that happen within the track that are not perfect, sometimes make the track perfect. So you have to really be open to the fact that I'm creating this thing, and I'm creating it without judgment, without comparison. And you know what? Things are happening in there that I'm not used to. Sometimes those things are actually they're the nuances that actually make the track. If you really think that it's not what it is, well, then you have to go back and ask yourself, why isn't it happening? The why is a very, very important question. So if you think the why is because these little things or these little minute things aren't happening, well, then is that a good enough reason to actually stop the project? I have been in that phase many times, and I have stopped complete projects of mine. It's not a good position to be in. And you know what? People really want to listen to your work, and they want you to be out there and releasing some stuff and releasing some good music. And sometimes our standards and our perfectionism really throws a spanner in the works, and you think, and that's where the insecurities come in. But if you think that, you know what, this is quite good, there are a few things here and there, give it to some others to have a listen to for feedback, right, before you release it. And if you're really adamant that these little things are going to be those things that really bug you, get some feedback. Get some feedback and get them to listen to the whole track, and then get them to listen to these little things in particular, but don't mention it to them. So they're the things that are probably going to, set the momentum back up. So it's very, very important to think that, yes, I want this to be off standard, but I can't really take it too far because I want to release it because I really love the song or I really love the musical piece of work. So perfectionism stops momentum. Just think about that, yeah? The next phase I wanted to talk about is the emotional attachment. And this one's quite a big one too. Emotional attachment is something that you put so much pressure on this one musical piece of work, and it's all about the musical piece of work and your connection to it. So sometimes you don't want to complete this song because you want it to define you, or you want it to prove something, or you want it to launch your career into the stars, right? That sort of pressure actually stops creativity, and it stops you going forward. When that happens, then your momentum is also buggered. And not every little piece of song, and not everything that you produce, or not every little bit in that song needs to be connected to you in such a profound way. At the end of the day, we're producing songs, and we're creating music, not just for us, but for others as well. So you're always going to have an emotional attachment to everything that you release and everything that you create. But it's at that moment and point of time when you're creating in the process, most of the time, right? Your emotion is already in there, whether you're going to release it or not, right? And your attachment to it could be a positive one. You still could be attached to it, but it's also been released, right? It's been out there for people to listen to. And it's in no way the reason that it should debilitate your going forward, and it should not be the reason that you're going to shelve the project or shelve the actual musical arrangement or the music itself. Some songs can also be stepping stones to another song, right? Or some songs can be experiments, and you can actually tell people that. Say that, this has been a bit of an experiment, or it's a pre-release to a release that I'm going to be doing. That actually reduces some of the stress inside as well. So, or it can be something that teaches some things to someone, right? Now, we all grow as artists. We're all in that same boat. People are at different levels, obviously, but really the ultimate thing here is for you to release that piece of music, not to be sitting on it, not to be unfinished, right? You're going to have some unfinished pieces, and that's all good and well, but really give them and come back to them. As I said earlier, come back to them within days or weeks or within a month. And if it's not really your liking or anything like that, well then shelve it, but really exhaust all avenues. So the takeaway from this, and before I sign off, is you got all these phases, right? You got these phases. The first one is the creativity, the exciting phase. The next one, you got the fear phase, and the fear of not being good enough. Then you got the too many options phase, and then you got the perfectionism, stops the momentum phase, and then you got the emotional attachment phase, which is right at the end there, right? The the 5 things that can help you with this and relieving this sort of anxiety or this situation is set the deadlines, simplify the process, simplify the plugins and all of that. Stop chasing perfection as much as possible. Get the feedback and finish more songs. Quite simple, but you need to really be aware of it, right? So at the end of the day, unfinished songs and unfinished projects won't help you grow as an artist. It'll actually do the opposite, and you'll probably be closed in more. Imperfect songs are also they're a learning point for all of us as well. Why is it imperfect? Or maybe the imperfection actually makes it perfect as well, as I said before. So really sit down and ask yourself why, and find that driver. Find what it is that's driving the project, and see if you can drive it to the end, and you will be a much better artist at the end of it because you had learned so much. That is the takeaway from this episode. Please, if there are any questions that anyone has or anything like that, hit me up, musicproservices.com, or on the socials, I should say, or become a subscriber, click the thumbs up, And hopefully this has given you a bit more insight as to, finishing unfinished projects and musical pieces of work. Until the next episode, ciao.